Pop Culture Pastor.
Okay, Cody. Have you ever had a job where they made you do the exit interview style thing, or not the interview, but at least fill out the little form that says why you're leaving? And have you wanted to check all the boxes, the negative boxes of the reasons why you're leaving?
So I have never left a job where I've gotten to do that
Willingly. You've had been escorted out, I heard.
About to leave this job.
We'll offer you our severance pay. See what I did there?
I did.
Which is a percentage of your pay you're receiving now.
$0 hairs.
All right. Yeah, I got a kick out of that. Because this episode, man, there wasn't much levity. And we needed that levity. We needed a little Dylan levity because, man, this episode, while it seemed like you would almost say it's not filler, but it's setup. They're clearly setting up. It's a penultimate episode, meaning that it's the last one before the finale. And it seems like they're moving pieces into place here. And in so doing, it just seemed like there was a lot of heaviness this episode. As we rejoin all the characters after taking a couple weeks off into individual character stories.
Yes.
And which, by the way, the online scuttlebutt or the reaction to especially last week's episode, the Harmony Cobell episode, was largely, there was a lot of negative people out there.
They're jabronis.
If
you're listening to this podcast and that was you have a chance to say, you know what, maybe I should have taken a step back.
Yeah, it's wild because, yeah, I sense that about people, but if you just move the plot along while never developing the characters, then you end up not caring about the characters.
Where I do think that with a lot of these characters, I do want to know more. And I can see some people saying maybe Harmony wouldn't be their top character to have individual episode. But she definitely is a very fascinating character and potentially a key component to however the season finale is going to go. So it was justified.
Yeah. So this is season 2 of Severance episode 9 titled The After Hours. And we're here to recap it. This is Pop Culture Pastor Watch-Alongs. My name's Dave. Cody's here.
I am here.
And we are ready to get into it. But first, Cody, what the Lumon?
What the Lumon indeed. So, I was so mad with X. The social media
The social media
site.
network, not, okay.
Yes.
Not
Because
DMX. He is going to give it to you.
Yes.
He's a little late. It's taken a while, but no, I'm just messing around. Go ahead.
So like everyone, their mom was posting spoilers or things that you should know. And, yeah, Friday. It was a dangerous time to be on X. But the one thing that did happen Thursday night, Friday morning that I did see that wasn't super spoiler-y was the title of this episode, which was
The After Hours.
The After Hours.
Yes.
Has the same title as an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, does it have relevance?
And so everyone's like, oh, we got to watch this. Got to dig in for deep clues. And then one of the people on X that was hilarious were like, this episode being named The After Hours because of these lines alone was so explicative, to be honest. And the reason it was called that, because Harmony Cobell, when she pulls up with Mark in the back of the truck and Devin right beside her to the new facility place, she says, I'm looking for a golden thimble. And that's what that episode starts off with, is I'm looking for a golden thimble.
Oh, so her password is just borrowed from that episode of The Twilight Zone.
And evidently is why we have called it that, because that episode is about mannequins.
Yeah, I watched the clip that you sent me, and I'm like, I have no idea what this means.
that they take turns going out to the real world and living. And now I do think there is a comp for the innies and the mannequins, because at the end of the clip that I sent you, the lady that had stayed out an extra day, she basically was like, when will they see us for who we are, that we are not that different?
Yeah.
And so there may be something deeper at play that we're just not fully aware of yet, but there might not be.
I mean, probably not. But this is the same thing that happened with shows like Lost, albeit in a much older sort of way, because that was 20 years ago. But this is people like the writers drop something in the episode that's like an Easter egg, but because they were inspired by it. Like, clearly the inspiration of that old Twilight Zone episode went into the creators of this show's heart, and they see the similarity, and they just dropped an Easter egg in there to say, hey, this show inspired this in some way. Instead, we take it as, this is a deep and meaningful clue.
Super. So my What the Lumen was more about the online reaction, but at the same time, we have a new building that we're at, so
yeah,
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so let's get into it. The episode begins with Helena Egan swimming in the Olympic-sized pool in the Egan Manor, as one does.
I would.
I mean, what you do every morning in Cody Manor, right? Do you have an Olympic-sized pool, Cody?
The chateau, as we call it.
I'm not even sure you could fit one in my yard.
You could fit one in my yard, but I don't think you'd want to swim in it.
So she enters what looks like James. Am I saying, is it Jame or Jamie? I think I ask this every time he appears. I think it's Jame.
Jame or Jamie. We're good with either or.
It's spelled James, so I'm going to call him Jame. His mom gave him that name, and I'm just going to go with it. As Helena enters James' office in full Helly R getup, like she's getting ready to, go to work, James says, "A momentous day."
Spot on.
Thank you. Helena sits down to eat, asking her father, "Won't you eat?" He says, "I'll watch." Ew.
That was weird.
Yeah. Then she weirdly eats her one hard-boiled egg, taking just as long as arranging the 6 pieces it's been cut into as it probably did to eat it.
Did you notice that she cut it up into super small bites after doing the breaking of it into 6 equal pieces?
Yeah. She's eating it with a knife and a fork. Like, what? What the what? She chopped a hard-boiled egg into 6 pieces, Cody. Those are small enough to eat. And yet she uses okay. Well, this brings up a question I wanted to ask you. Because whatever Cold Harbor is it possible that this is a manner of permanently cheating death? Because humans take pleasure in eating good food. But James' wish to simply watch Helena eat tells me that he can't eat, or maybe not much, so he'll do the next best thing.
He's a vampire.
All while drink. That is not a conspiracy. That's just a normal theory. All while drinking coffee from what looks like a toy teacup. But that's coffee. I had to rewind it to make sure, because they make a point of showing us up close the liquid he's pouring into this. I mean, it looks small in this dude's hand, and that dude looks like he's about 5'7".
So there are some specialty coffees that you do drink in like a miniature shot.
This is true.
So I was like, maybe he's drinking something really fancy.
In my mind, he's drinking black coffee and like a swallow of it after turning down food and saying, "I'd rather watch you eat."
So my conspiracy is...
Wait. This is a real one?
Not about him, but about...
But this is a full-blown...
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Conspiracy!
Helena is preggers. And that's why she is eating her food, not really eating it.
And why she's not taking it raw?
Yes.
Which...
That was gross. Unless you're Rocky Balboa, you don't do that.
Hey, yo, I just like eating raw eggs, you know?
Or Gaston.
Oh man, yeah, it was a good way to start the episode because it was very weird, very strange, but gives us a little insight. As obviously we just got to talk about, like, oh, what's this all about?
But he did not call her a fetid moppet.
No, but all of that weirdness seems to be like, hey, they're showing us this for a reason, and I'm betting this is going to make sense at some point.
It better, because I am completely lost.
We have talked a lot on if any of these other Lumon outsiders would join the Any revolution, especially Milchick. We've talked about Milchick quite a bit.
Milkshake.
This was the first time I openly wondered while watching Helena get chastised for eating her one hard-boiled egg, if maybe, just maybe, Lumon might find themselves with a massive revolt. Because now you throw Cobell, who's actively working against them now. Milchick, we'll talk about later, but seems like he may be really close to snapping. And now Helena all seem to have misgivings now about their employer. And we get this, as Helena leaves Egan Manor, we get this long pull-out camera shot, which I also thought was weird on first drop and first viewing until I thought about it. But they pull out to see you see a water tower with the Lumon drop logo on it, which seems to be the show kind of telling us that, oh, wherever this is, Lumon controls the water supply, which is a scary thought.
It is. I don't like it.
Yeah. So that was very interesting.
Devin, don't drink the water.
We move on to Miss Wong and Milchick. Eustace Wong, today marks the end of your Wintertide Fellowship. Ah, Eustace Wong, we hardly knew you. Like what? Oh, she's going away. Where to, you might ask? Oh, I'm glad I asked that question.
Yes.
Your bed will be moved from your parents' home to the Gunnel Egan Empathy Center in Svalbard. Cody, that was worded in a very specific and weird way. Why is her bed so important? Don't answer that.
I won't.
Because conspiracy! You're getting so many conspiracies for the amount of your money this week, viewers. We have openly wondered if the whole Audi Any world was a Lumon-controlled environment. This, in particularly, the way he says your bed will be moved, seems to be another clue. If they don't need to eat very much, but they've showed us that the reintegration affects their hunger, if they actually need a specific bed for their fake bodies, Cody, what if everyone we've seen in this whole entire show are not real humans in the real world, but all the Audis, Innies, and everyone else are in some massive life simulation conducted by Lumon using clones in an attempt to give the Egans eternal life? What if this is all an experiment inside Lumon, Audis, Innies, all of it?
So Westworld.
But like not robots, clones.
Yes. So the technology, although appearing to be outdated, may be far advanced.
Yes. Yeah.
I did wonder that with Papa Egan not eating. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting because Svalbard is a real place. Mm-hmm. It's in Norway.
Yeah.
Close to the North Pole.
Wherever it is that Lumon's going to be, it's going to be somewhere cold and icy, hellscape-ish.
Yep.
Miss Huang will work to steward global reforms, assuming for the Severance program. She says, I thought I would work through the quarter. And he says, empathy awaits, fellow Huang. The handbook requires you to mark this betterment with a material sacrifice. This time, her material sacrifice, Cody, would appear to be the water-filled ring toss game from my pediatrician's office circa 1983. You remember those?
I do remember those.
You push the button and it blows the bubble in the water and it blows the rings up and you try to get the rings to stick on the... Anyways, I felt really bad for Miss Long that one, this was her form of entertainment, and two, she was having to give it up.
Her Kier ring toss.
Yeah.
Goes the way of the dodo bird.
For what it's worth, Milchick appears to be enjoying Miss Wong's internal pain.
He might be justified.
Yeah, maybe. Gretchen and Dylan's outie. We go to them. Gretchen, where they appear to all be getting ready as a family to do what they do in the morning, and Gretchen admits kissing Dylan's innie. Uh-oh, Cody. I don't know why she did that.
So it was at this moment that I'm like, I don't know if outie Dylan would have much of a reaction.
Okay, so you think he wouldn't have had the reaction he would have.
That he did have, yeah.
Okay, but why?
Because his nonchalantness and him constantly asking like, oh, how did the meeting with my innie go? Would lead me to think that he would view himself, even the split versions, being one. That like you kissing any me is just you actually kissing me. I just am not aware of it.
Maybe. So in my head, I see Dylan as someone who's addicted to being a victim.
That is the other possibility in the route that they go. And
assuming that their marriage isn't doing well, which really affects the intimacy portion of their marriage not doing well, the fact that she was, and I don't even mean intimacy in any other way, but just closeness, her having some form of intimacy at all with his innie seems like that would be a major problem for him.
Yes.
Like I can see it, but I can also see that it's hard because it's an hour-long show most weeks, and it's hard to give the necessary time for each character. So I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't know if they've done enough work, because I could have seen that going either way.
Yeah.
At any rate, it seems like a bad idea to admit it. And we're pastors.
Yes.
Because I'm like, I'm not sure you did anything wrong here, because technically it's him, sort of. She's oddly specific in her disclosure. Like, she could have just said, I kissed him. But she tells outie Dylan, I kissed him for about a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan doesn't take it well. She says, he reminded me of how you used to be. Oof.
Yep.
And I think at that point, after she says that, I'm like, okay, Dylan has a right to be angry here.
Dylan's reaction after that is justified.
Most of it. His anger is justified. But then in his anger, he says something that I wrote here in my notes is so completely out of line. He says, I'm going to go to work to earn a paycheck to feed our children. Now, two things. One, Gretchen's clearly wearing the uniform of a civil public servant.
Yep.
She's got a job. She's either a first responder, a cop, something high stress, and earning like not a ton of money, probably, but she's clearly working.
Yes.
Two, she isn't severed. Like, bro, you don't have to balance all this. She does.
So
you don't have to be conscious while putting out the effort of working a thankless job and balancing a dreary life where your spouse is sure to belittle and minimize your contribution. Come on, man. That was out of line.
So for me, in logic speaking, yes, out of line. But
his anger.
It is foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. Oh, so you'll say that and tell me what that is? Because I'm interested to know what that is, foreshadowing.
Yes.
Okay. Irv and Burt. Irv returns to his spacious one-bedroom studio to find Burt waiting for him.
Burt, how'd you get in?
Christopher Walken going back to the old mob movie acting role days. He's holding one of the notebooks that Mr. Drummond found in his foray into Irv's apartment, and he reads from one, referencing Lumon's responsibility with some disappearances. Quote, Goodman may have participated as a low-level Lumon enforcer, a goon. A goon? That stings. In just the most Walken way.
We didn't use that kind of language.
Yeah. At this point, Irv seems a little scared. Like, he says, that was before. I know now that you aren't with him anymore, but clearly he's having a hard time believing that in the moment. He thinks Bert's there to off him, which doesn't get alleviated with the next thing Burt says.
Yes.
You go for a ride with me.
Honestly, like, assuming that Irv isn't just leaving this out willy-nilly.
Yeah.
How does he know where it's at?
Well, he's clearly still under the employ of Lumon. Mr. Drummond told him where it was and has told him, I think, if we read between the lines, what Lumon has told Burt to do is to kill him. But that's not what happens. But we'll get back to them. Meanwhile, it's 9:00 and the numbers aren't moving. Weird dentist guy is watching Gemma, makes a call to Drummond, who then makes a call to Milchick. The numbers aren't moving. Milchick says he may just be running late. The final quota was promised today. This is over and over in this episode. Lumon thinks this is going to be like the biggest day in the history of Lumon.
It is the biggest day in the history of Lumon.
Whatever Cold Harbor represents, everyone in the company thinks it's supposed to be this biggest thing that's ever happened. But Milchick's annoyed because he's got to go try and track down Mark S.
I'm annoyed too.
Helly, meanwhile, walks out of the Severance elevator on a mission. But nobody's around, though, because Mark isn't there. Because Mark's head is currently being held up by a seatbelt. Which we've all been there, right? You've been the kid or not felt good and, rested your head in the shoulder belt. Yeah, I've been there. Mark and Devin are currently off to go meet Cobell in the wintry wilderness somewhere. And then we go back to Gretchen and Innie Dylan. And this is stinking heartbreaking. Gretchen tells Innie Dylan that she told his Audi about the kiss, to which Dylan says, "Was he glad for us?" Oh, Dylan. Oh, my goodness. Well, he should be, because I'm making you happy and he's not. Oh, my gosh. This whole scene was like ripping a Band-Aid off slowly.
It was.
And she says, "I can't see you anymore." To which he says, "My life started when you came here. I have nothing else. I have this and pencil erasers." And we're getting like the depth of what will be his sadness. It's all heartbreaking. And it ends about the way one would expect, with Innie Dylan wanting to end himself in the form of a resignation.
But first he gives a ring.
Yeah, I skip over that part. He made a ring out of cardboard.
It was his finger trap toy at his desk.
Yeah.
He cut it and made it into a ring. That's special.
Yeah, because that was like a prized possession of his, because he got it for doing a good job. Remember in season 1? Yeah,
Be Still My Heart.
All of this is like soul crushing. This is so sad. And you can totally understand where Innie Dylan is at. And again, we're back to this ongoing theme of like, this is life. This severed consciousness is life, even though it happens unbeknownst to the outward body. Like, this is wildly prescient and relevant in our culture and societies today, in my opinion. What is life? What is a soul?
Yeah. So my foreshadowing thing was, out of anger, Audi Dylan will go to work. But in anger and depression, he will quit.
Yeah.
He will resign. And like, it's just his temperament that it doesn't go his way. He's going to do the opposite of what he should do.
Yeah. Yeah. This was all, man, Dylan's a hard character to watch right now. With being one of your favorite characters in season 1 going into this season, now you know the backstory, and he's super tragic. Just a super tragic character.
I will say, I hadn't noticed that the poster
was Dylan.
Is Dylan.
Yeah.
Keeping them, the severed innies online outside.
Yeah. That's wild.
And no one is like,
that looks
that's
a lot
weird.
Like so Dylan goes back to work just momentarily, and Helly is there and tries to talk him down. That doesn't work. And he ends up saying something mean to Helly, which kind of prompts her into action. So Helly's different than Dylan, right?
Yep.
Helly feels bad. She moves to action. So she goes and
She's an Egan.
that's right. She goes and retrieves Irv's directions to the elevator. She's in the middle of memorizing the directions when James shows up on the Severance floor.
That was weird.
Go back to episode 1 when Mark comes back and we see the shadowy like figure in the background. Do you think that was James?
Maybe.
I'm still a little interested in that. Anyways, he walks up behind her and he says, "You tricked me, my Helly." And then that's it.
Well, she has a reaction, but
Yeah, what's going on there?
yeah, because either she doesn't know him at all, which one could believe, or she does know him and is wondering why he is here. And so her WTF moment, because that's what she says in response to him saying that.
Yeah.
Like, she definitely is startled.
Well, he calls her Helly. All of that was very interesting. But yeah, you're left with a couple options. One, she's the severed innie of Helena Egan. She's Helly R. And she's truly like, what the heck is he talking? Who is this? And what is he talking about? Or he's implying that this is Helena Egan again. That she somehow circumvented the severance process again.
So her hair wasn't put up like Helly's typically is. So I was wondering the whole episode, like, who are we dealing with? Like, did Helly get out and go to the Egan compound, or is that Helena and Helena is inside the severed floor again? And is he referencing that she's pregnant?
Well, see, the hair thing hadn't occurred to me at all because she's so ready for work when she goes in to eat that morning. I just assumed, well, she's just getting ready for work to look like Helly, I guess. But I don't know how all that works, and I never really thought about it before. Anyways, that's where we end with that particular grouping of characters. So we don't really know what he means by "you tricked me." I assume we'll find out next week. Milchick, meanwhile, after watching his discontent, his anger growing for Lumon, slowly building all season, he finally has this moment with Mr. Drummond, as Mr. Drummond is telling him to continue apologizing for using big words because he thanks him. So Drummond tells him he messed up, and he thanks him for the remonstrations.
I'm like, I don't know what that means. Quit using big words.
Mr. Drummond's like, apologize for the word. And he's like, my apologies or something. And he's like, shorter. I'm sorry. Again. Then he becomes like, the coach from Miracle.
Yes.
Again. And he finally breaks. As Drummond continues to tell him to apologize, he finally just says, devour feculence. Which Cody, even in the, like, watching it the first time, I was like, did he just, oh yeah, he did.
Because, eat poop.
Yeah, he told him to do that. Drummond says, what did you just say to me? And then he says, Milchick says, I am manager of the severed floor, which means two things. One, I am owed a measure of respect, even by my superiors. Second, and more obvious, that said floor comprises the whole of my jurisdiction. To put that, and this is beautiful, to put that monosyllabically, it's not my fault what Mark Scout does when he's not at work. It's yours. And then leaves. And bro, Trammell Tillman, oh my gosh, the actor who plays Milchick, I don't know what to think of Milchick. I don't know if he's going to end up turning good or if he's going to be a big bad in the end of this. But I was like, yeah,
winning.
Oh man, that scene was so satisfying. So satisfying. What a great performance by Trammell Tillman for an actor I had no idea who he was before this show to this now, and I'm just like, yes, this guy. Put this guy in all the things. We go back to Irv and Burt on the drive. Burt says, I want to tell you, I never hurt anyone. I have a terrible Christopher Walken impression.
It was close-ish.
You should know that. I drove people places. I didn't ask what happened to them once they got there. Is that what? And Irving says, is that what today is? Like Irving's still thinking like, oh man, this dude's going to off me. Well, it is. Sort of, but it's not quite. It's a little unclear. Burt takes Irving to a train station.
I've watched enough Yellowstone. I know what that means.
Not that train station. This is an actual train station. He buys him a one-way ticket to we don't know where. And this line, Burt tells him this line goes as far as you can go. I can't know where you get off, and you can never come back to Kier. Do you understand? And Irving asks, will Lumon come after him for whatever he's doing? Saving Irving's life, I guess, against the orders of Lumon. And Burt kind of just has a look that kind of implies that Burt is sacrificing himself for Irv here.
Potentially.
And as if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, we get Burt says, you ask me why I severed. I like the idea that I could be innocent again. Part of me, but then my innocent part fell in love with you.
Aww.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all very heartbreaking. And in the end, what Burt is saying, though, is that the gamble worked. He became someone that he wasn't before. Again, proving here that the severed soul has done something to the rejoined soul. Or was it already always a part of him? Something happened, and was it love?
Potentially.
There's a lot of philosophical questions to ask here in Burt's actions.
There are other characters, I would say, your severed self and your outie self are pretty close to the same person, that like you can see some of your flaws happen inside and outside.
Yeah.
Although I would think that the innies and the outies would be a good case study for nature versus nurture, since you're starting almost with a blank slate with the innies.
Yeah, the innies are like children.
And so what things are just inherently in your genetics, and then what things were shaped by who raised you.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of deep questions, and I thought in that scene with Burt, when you understand what Burt is doing and the implication that he is sacrificing himself to get Irv when he was probably told to kill Irving.
You don't kill Irving.
Yeah, although the show tries real hard in this scene, I think, to tell us that this is the last time we'll see Irving. He's on a train with his dog. He has no luggage, no belongings. And he's looking out the window at sunshine and melting snow, Cody.
I felt bad for Irving.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's also like, oh, he's getting out.
But he had never known love.
Yes. Yeah, which he says.
And then he doesn't get to experience it. You get off.
Yeah.
Get out of town. Scram, kid.
He specifically says, I've never felt it. But didn't he just? Is not love laying down one's life for one's friends?
Oh, Irv.
I think he just did. I think that's the point of the story, is that is a happy ending, even though it doesn't feel that way. Okay. Dylan resigns in a very Dylan way. Checking all the negative boxes.
Yep.
When episode 9 ends, we're left wondering whether or not he's going to follow in Irving's footsteps to any heaven. Miss Wong apologizes to Dylan, saying, I should have facilitated better.
She should have.
But an interesting bit of outward emotion from Miss Wong that we had not seen, as she's probably sad for her reassignment.
Her world was shaken earlier.
Yeah. And if Miss Wong is talking about that she allowed Dylan and Gretchen to, any Dylan and Gretchen to be together and woo each other, then, I mean, probably she's right. Probably should have nipped that in the bud.
There was a couple episodes I was wondering where Eustace was.
But she also is sent on her way by the end of the episode as a Lumon shuttle whisks her away while we see a very defeated Dylan step into the Severance elevator for maybe the last time.
Maybe, but they would have to tell his outie self, hey, you don't work here anymore. You quit. Yeah. But then so does it become the Helena Helly thing from season 1? Where the Audi says, I don't give you permission. You got to go back.
That certainly seems like what's probably going to happen, because I don't think Audi Dylan wants to go back to work. He's tried that already.
Yep.
And it didn't work out. So I think he feels trapped. But the episode's going to end with Cobell, Mark, and Devin. Mark clearly still not a believer in Cobell, but being willing to help them. But she says that, hey, if any Mark finishes Cold Harbor, then Gemma is dead. So she had him call Milchick, tell him he was out for the day, and the strange new partnership here. They find themselves on the way to this birthing retreat, which was still in my mind. I still was like, what is this? What are we talking about here? I know that Devin had this interaction with someone back in season 1, but the plan is they have these severed rooms in this birthing retreat.
Yes.
Where they can have a chat with any Mark. Now, it's very interesting as they pull up to the retreat. Cobell is trying to use her wiles to convince the security guard to let them through the gate. And this is the line that ends up being the one. She says she's one of Jamie's, or whatever it is she says. Implying that Devin is pregnant because Mark's hiding in the back of the truck.
Yes.
Is the show implying that Jaime Egan is having a lot of illegitimate children? Is that what they're implying? That there's a ton of little Egans running around Kier PE?
It makes sense to me.
Gross. This is wild stuff. But it appeared that Cobell was in the know on all of this. And at the end of the episode, any Mark wakes up inside of one of the retreat's cabins. He's understandably confused. He does remember Devin. He says, "Are you my?" before being cut off. But Devin leads him to a giant room where Cobell is posing in front of this very awesome looking fireplace. It looks like the whole thing is a kind of amazing looking, the cinematography, and it's supposed to be dramatic. And Devin says, "Do you remember the last thing you said to me?" And Devin and Mark responds, "She's alive." So any Mark, that's what he remembers. And we assume they're going to have a talk with any Mark. I don't know how this is going to go. What can any Mark provide to them?
According to one of the online outlets, when that scene happens, their initial thought was Cobell is backlit against a roaring fireplace like some demon who recently fled the pits of hell.
Oh.
Which...
that's good imagery.
It is good imagery, considering that we have compared this whole show to being an analogy or an allegory for hell.
I like the imagery of that, especially with the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yep. I do think one big thing that will immediately come out is any Mark knows how much percent that they stopped at, if they completed Cold Harbor or not. So he's going to be like, we're just a couple % off.
Yeah. Yep. Cody, who's the winner of the episode?
So
feels like there's so many sad parts to this episode. It's hard to pick a winner.
I'm going to go with someone that I might also go with as the loser, but I haven't decided that yet. But I'm going with Irv. And it's because of a couple things. One, we get some deep revelation about who he was and how he really felt alone like all his life. And but it's what is said between Dylan and Helly. And that is, then how come Mark couldn't tell that you were gone? How come I couldn't tell you were gone? And she said, Irving could. Yeah. And with what Jamie says at the end of Helly's time on screen, that you tricked me, can he not tell?
Yeah.
And is Irv closer to being Helly's dad than Helly's actual dad?
Maybe. I'm going to concur. I was thinking that for a while, that I think the winner of this episode, and you have to look deeply, you have to understand what happens in that final scene where Irv says, I've never felt love. Also implying that he didn't feel it from his parents, that Irv's led a pretty sad life. And so, but the last moments of Burt are to sacrifice him to get Irv to safety. That is love. And I just thought that was actually, if we don't see Irv again, I thought that was a beautiful ending for that character, for him to literally ride off into the sun, into the melting snow. I think if that's the last time we see him, Irv's definitely the winner of the episode and maybe the season so far.
Potentially.
He gets out with the help of Burt, former goon. Goon. We didn't use that language.
At Lumon.
Who's the loser up of the episode, Cody?
So now that I've thought about it a little bit longer, I'm going with Dylan's wife.
Oh my gosh.
She lost with the innie and the outie.
Oh, and to see her tears, she knows it too. She knows that, like, the thoughts. I tried to put myself into her shoes to think about what she's thinking there.
I knew this was just only going to end in heartbreak.
Oh, man.
From the beginning of the introduction of, you can have family, personal time.
Yeah.
No.
That was a tough watch. And so, like, she understands that Outie Dylan is her actual husband. And in a way, she's being faithful. But how, like, the weirdness of all of this, like, trying to put yourself in her shoes, it just seems like an impossible situation. And she has to choose I have to be sad route.
Yep.
Oh, man, that was wild. Loser of the episode, that was a good pick, by the way. My loser of the episode is Milchick. The show continues to push his frustration until it boils over in the scene with Drummond, which is like this moment of kind of, it makes the viewer feel good, but Milchick is still in a very conflicted place. When Helly shows him up and implies he can't do anything to her because of her outie, who her outie is, and he tells her to leave his door open while she shuts it.
Yep.
It's a moment of complete and utter disrespect, and I couldn't help but feel some empathy for Milchick, as I felt for him at times in this season, even though he's been a full Lumon goon. He's a Lumon guy. But I felt some empathy for it, because if you haven't felt that, if you've never been in an environment where you've put in the work and you've done what you needed to do to get some authority, and yet you still feel completely disregarded, that's a terrible feeling. That's an utterly terrible feeling. And so I just felt bad for Milchick, and he seems to be heading for a breaking point where we've talked about this, where he's going to go one of two directions. He's either goes full big bad, or he's going to join the revolt.
So I have seen stills from the trailer.
Oh,
that have not been used yet.
Spoilers.
So theoretically, these have to be in this episode.
Okay. Could have been cut.
Could have been cut. It would be weird. But one of them, Milchick, is ripping off his tie.
Oh, that could mean anything.
You're welcome. The other 7 images, 3 of them are like, ooh, I need to see this hour and 16-minute episode, because that's how long it's going to be.
It's going to be a big one. So I'm excited. This episode sets it up, and I'm excited for the last episode coming next week. Cody, how many rings fashioned out of an old Chinese finger trap out of 10 are you giving this episode?
7.5.
Yeah. All right. I think it was an 8. For me, it was about an 8. It's a good episode. I understand they're setting a lot of things up. I preferred last week's episode.
Yes.
I know a lot of people online did not. I loved last week's episode.
The past 2 episodes were definitely higher for me.
Yeah.
This one, I know that it's set up, and so like when we go back or when we record the season finale, I might be like, oh, you know what? That setup episode was super meaningful, impactful, and so I might go back and retrograde it up to an 8.
Yeah.
But if it was like, we could have actually done without some of this, then I might go back and go lower. Who knows?
I do have a feeling that there were several moments in this episode that we cannot get the full feeling for yet. That once we have some additional information, there will be a lot more feeling attached to it. Anyways, let us know what you thought about this episode. I hope you're enjoying our watch-alongs with Severance Season 2, the last one, coming next week. We'll see you then.